6 months after Gideon Cole took the family shop, an empty cart stopped the sale that would make him rich. A railway company gathered inside Fenbridge Market to sign the conveyance. Its surveyor rolled the cart onto the weighbridge. The indicator settled at 0. Gideon ordered workmen to tear out the broken scale before anyone inspected beneath it. Harriet Cole stepped between their crowbars and the platform. She placed 3 certified weights around the cart. The scale counted every added pound while ignoring the cart. Then she turned its wheels toward a row of iron studs. The cart's full weight returned with a jolt. The company's solicitor closed the contract folder. A hidden mechanism could change the boundary inquiry. 6 months earlier, Gideon had used a disputed codicil to claim Cole and Daughter Grocers. He left Harriet the abandoned market, £102 in arrears, and a removal notice for the weighbridge. Harriet had graded produce and checked merchant scales for 15 years. On her first day inside the condemned hall, she saw iron studs beneath an empty cart and fresh chalk along a boundary wall. Gideon had called both worthless. Yet he had sold one and marked the other for destruction before she had even received the keys. The keys had first lain between them on Mr. Lyle's desk in March 1875. 2 opened Fenbridge Market. The third belonged to the room above the grocery where Harriet had slept since she was 17. At 33, Harriet wore her dark brown hair in a plain coil beneath a gray wool bonnet. Her blue work dress showed chalk at one cuff from the grocery scales. Gideon covered that key with his hand. "You may collect your clothes before 6, he said. "After that, the room goes with the shop." His black morning coat was new. The narrow band around his hat looked chosen for business rather than grief. Their Uncle Benjamin had been buried 12 days earlier. Gideon had already replaced the painted sign over the door. Harriet looked at the codicil again. It gave Gideon every trading concern presently conducted under the Cole name. A later paragraph gave her the old market hall, its fixtures, liabilities, and a pertinent yard. Her uncle had never called the hall an appurtenant anything. He called it the old sheds. This was signed 4 days before he died, Harriet said. Mr. Lyle folded his hands. The witnesses attest that he understood it. One witness keeps Gideon's warehouse books. "My clerk's employment doesn't make him dishonest," Gideon said. "Your clerk's employment makes him yours." Mr. Lyle shifted in his chair. "A challenge would require money, Miss Cole. The estate cannot fund both sides of a family objection." The estate now meant Gideon. Harriet heard the change and understood its price. For 15 years, she had checked the growers' baskets before purchases were entered. She knew how damp soil increased a sack's weight and how dishonest lead could be hidden beneath a scale pan. Benjamin had taught her with bruised apples and a county inspector's discarded tables. Her figures had protected the grocery's margin through 2 bad harvests. None of that appeared in the codicil. Mr. Lyle pushed a second document toward her. The market owed £102 in rates. £12 had to be paid within 10 days to prevent the borough from seeking possession. A separate notice allowed a railway contractor to remove the disused weighbridge as an obstruction. "Why would the railway care about a scale inside a locked market?" Harriet asked. Gideon leaned back. "Because rails require room. There are no rails on Market Lane. There will be improvements. Sensible people prepare for them." That answer told her more than he intended. Gideon had known about the notice before the codicil was read. He had also brought a release for her signature. In exchange for £5 and 3 nights above the shop, she would surrender the market and any claim against the estate. Harriet read the release twice. "Who receives the hall?" "The borough, most likely." "Then let the borough ask me." Gideon's mouth tightened. "You cannot pay £12. "No." "You cannot mend the roof." "No." "You have no household, no husband, and no credit." Mr. Lyle studied his blotting paper. Harriet placed the unsigned release beside it. "Those facts don't give you my answer." She accepted the market deed. The choice cost her the room above the shop before the ink dried. Gideon sent his porter to pack her trunk and refused payment for her final 6 weeks of work. By late afternoon, Harriet stood outside Fenbridge Market with 2 dresses, a blanket, her folding balance gauge, and 11 shillings 4 pence. A red railway notice had been nailed across the wicket gate. "Removal of obsolete weighing apparatus," it read. "Work to commence in 9 days." Harriet unlocked the gate. The hinge dragged across grit, opening only wide enough for her trunk. Beyond it, the market roof dipped above 2 rows of wooden stalls. Broken glass covered the herb court. Damp had blackened the west wall from floor to beam. Near the far arch, an empty green cart rested on the weighbridge. Someone had drawn a fresh white line along the stones behind it. The white line ended beneath the cart's left wheel. Harriet set down her trunk and followed the chalk across the paving. It began at the west wall, crossed the weighbridge, and continued through the herb court to a bricked arch. Small letters appeared beside each turn. F.R.C. Fenbridge Railway Company. Someone had surveyed the hall before Benjamin's codicil entered probate. Harriet compared the removal notice with the codicil. The railway notice had been issued 2 days earlier. Gideon had known the market stood in a proposed route when he arranged her inheritance. Evening was closing, and the building offered few safe places to sleep. The southern row of stalls leaned toward a blocked drain. Water had softened 2 supporting posts. Above them, 3 panes hung loose in their frames. The north aisle was drier, though bird droppings and rotted baskets covered its counters. A narrow weighing office stood beside the platform. Its door had swollen shut. Harriet pulled the latch. The lower hinge tore from the jamb. Inside, damp paper clung to the walls, and a rusted stove sagged on one leg. The ceiling remained intact. It was the only corner where she could place her blanket without lying beneath damaged glass. Someone rattled the wicket gate. An elderly man in a canvas coat stared through the bars. "You Benjamin Cole's niece?" "Yes." "Then take care where you tread. The borough closed this place for good reason." "What reason?" asked the traders who were cheated. He walked away before Harriet reached the gate. Across Market Lane, a baker was turning his bread trays. Harriet bought yesterday's loaf for 3 pence and asked whether anyone nearby rented a room. The baker looked toward Cole Daughter Grocers. Gideon stood behind its polished window, speaking to 2 men in railway coats. "Not to you," the baker said. Harriet kept her voice even. "You asked every house? Your cousin says the market's title is contested. Anyone giving you credit may never be paid. I asked for a room, not credit. He also says you took stock from the grocery." She placed 3 pennies on his counter. "Did he say which stock?" The baker's eyes moved to her worn trunk. He wrapped the loaf without answering. That rumor would make 11 shillings last less than its value. It would also keep laborers from accepting her promise of payment. Gideon had begun stripping the market before the railway touched a bolt. Back inside, Harriet barred the gate with a broken stall rail. She ate beside the weighing office while daylight thinned across the floor. The empty cart remained on the platform. Its shafts were chained together, but neither wheel was secured. Harriet pushed at the rear board. The cart rolled an inch and stopped against grit. The scale indicator did not move. She cleared the wheels and pushed again. The cart crossed the platform until both axles stood free of the iron studs. The indicator rested exactly on 0. Perhaps the beam had seized. Harriet pressed one hand against the platform. The pointer trembled. She took the hanging produce scale from her trunk and checked its arms with her folding gauge. The instrument was meant for sacks and baskets, but its pivots remained true. Her trunk weighed 61 pounds. Harriet lifted it onto the market platform beside the cart. The indicator rose to 61. She removed the trunk. It fell to 0, ignoring several hundred pounds of oak and iron still above it. A damaged scale could stick or misread. It could not subtract one object while measuring another correctly. Harriet knelt near the wheels. 6 pairs of iron studs had been fitted into the paving at different widths. The cart's axle matched none in its present position. Fresh grease marked the nearest pair. A gust entered through the broken herb court. The cart moved backward. One wheel touched a stud. Metal struck beneath the platform. The beam jumped, then settled before Harriet could read the figure. She dragged the cart forward, but the wheel had wedged against the stud. Removing it would require a lever. The light had nearly gone. She lit one of her 2 candles and opened the inspection hatch beside the scale. Cold air rose from a brick-lined pit. The main weighing arm ran beneath the platform as expected. A second rod crossed it at an angle, passed under the row of studs, and disappeared toward the west wall. Chalk dust lay on its upper edge. Harriet lowered the candle. The rod had been greased that morning. Footsteps paused outside the barred gate. She covered the flame with her palm. A man tested the wicket once, then walked toward the railway offices without speaking. Harriet waited until the sound faded. Gideon believed the market would defeat her within 10 days. Yet someone had entered before her, marked a route through the property, and prepared a mechanism they now intended to remove. She looked into the scale pit again. The hidden rod continued beyond the weighbridge, directly beneath the railway's white boundary line. The rod disappeared into a sleeve cut through the pit's western bricks. Harriet sketched its angle on the back of the removal notice. She marked the 6 pairs of studs, the cart's position, and the chalk line overhead. Then she closed the hatch. Entering the pit alone in failing light would turn suspicion into injury. She dragged her trunk into the weighing office and braced the broken door with a timber. At dawn, iron wheels grated outside the gate. 2 railway laborers waited with crowbars. Their foreman, Mr. Barlow, held a copy of the removal notice. "Inspection before dismantling," he said. "Work commences in 8 days. We need measurements. Your company already took them." Harriet pointed to the white line. "You may return with written authority to enter before the stated date." "That machine is dangerous," Barlow said. "Then your men should keep their crowbars away from it." He gave her until noon to reconsider and left. The elderly man in the canvas coat watched from beside the baker's window. He crossed the lane. "My name is Peter Say," he said. "I portered here for 23 years. Were you among the traders who were cheated?" "I carried their loads. Your family wrote the tickets." Harriet accepted the accusation without defending Benjamin. "Do you know the empty cart?" Peter entered reluctantly. He studied the green boards and touched a repaired split near the tail. "It belonged to my brother. 800 weight, 2 quarters, and 9 pounds when Fenbridge Cartworks built it. Has it been altered?" "New rear wheel 5 years ago, same iron rim." Harriet fetched her folding gauge. The front and rear axles differed by nearly 4 inches. She measured the iron studs and found one pair matching the front wheels. Another matched the rear. "Help me move it." Peter hesitated. "The scale never weighed that cart fairly." "That may depend on where the wheels stood." They used a loose stall post as a lever. When the front wheels settled against the first studs, a latch clicked beneath the platform. The pointer rose above 0 but stopped short of the cart's known weight. "Still wrong," Peter said. Harriet aligned the rear wheels with the second pair. The beam rose to 800 weight, 2 quarters, and 9 pounds. Peter removed his cap. Harriet pushed the cart forward 6 inches. The indicator returned to 0. She set her 61-pound trunk on the platform, and the scale showed 61 again. "The machine subtracts the cart when it stands between its marks," she said. "That lets a clerk weigh produce without unloading it. Move both axles onto the studs, and the full tear returns for checking." Peter stared at the platform. Gideon's tickets deducted the cart after the beam had already done it. "Then every seller lost the tear twice. My brother lost 11 shillings on 1 potato load." Gideon called him a liar. Harriet's anger rose, though the evidence did not yet tell her whether Benjamin knew. "Who operated the platform?" Gideon read the beam. "Your uncle stayed in the shop after his lungs worsened." Peter crouched beside the inspection hatch. "I heard this mechanism at work for years. Never knew what moved below." Harriet showed him the second rod. He stopped touching the bricks. "That runs past the market wall. So does the railway's boundary." Peter looked toward Cole and Daughter Grocers. "Perhaps that's why your cousin wants both removed." Before noon, Peter returned with screws, a sound stove leg, and 2 lengths of stovepipe salvaged from his shed. Harriet paid 4 pence for the screws and refused to take the pipe until he accepted another 2 pence. They reset the weighing office door and raised the stove onto flat stones. Peter climbed no ladders with his stiff knee. Harriet avoided the loose roof glass. Their work secured 1 dry room without pretending to repair the hall. By mid-afternoon, smoke rose cleanly from the stovepipe. Harriet swept the office, dried her blanket, and wrote a notice on a packing board. "Cart tears and produce weights checked in view. 1 penny. Peter carried it to the gate. The first customer was the baker who had refused her a room. He brought a flour barrow and claimed curiosity. Harriet measured both axles, selected the matching studs, and weighed the empty barrow twice. She then tested his 28-pound flour weight. It was 6 ounces light. The baker flushed. "Gideon sold me that last Michaelmas." Harriet filed no accusation. She showed him the reading, then checked it again while Peter watched. By closing time, 3 carriers had paid for examinations. Harriet earned 7 pence. The sum could not meet 12 pounds, but the open gate had changed how people crossed Market Lane. Peter remained after the others left. He scraped damp paper from the weighing office wall and uncovered 6 faded columns painted directly on the plaster. Each bore an axle width and a stall number. Below the 6th column, a narrow black arrow pointed through the west wall. It matched the hidden rod's direction exactly. The black arrow ended at the west wall behind a stack of broken poultry crates. Harriet measured from the platform to the plaster. 31 feet, 8 inches. The hidden rod should have stopped there. Instead, its angle carried it at least 4 feet farther. Peter tapped the wall with his knuckles. The sound changed near the floor. "Brick above," he said. "Something thinner below." Harriet marked the place but refused to break the plaster without a plan. Damage done in haste would give the borough another reason to condemn the hall. The next morning, She visited the Fenbridge Land and Rates Office. A junior clerk produced the railway company's deposited survey after she paid sixpence for inspection and a tracing. The proposed line crossed the market's western yard. Gideon Cole appeared on the schedule as vendor. The boundary was drawn 4 feet inside the existing wall. Harriet placed her folding gauge along the planned scale. This leaves the weighing office on my property and the scale pit on his. The line follows information supplied by the vendor, the clerk said. What earlier survey did he supply? The clerk checked the index. An 1,848 market plan was listed with something called the measure walk schedule. Both were missing from their drawer. Who last requested them? He turned the register away. Office records aren't available for accusation. Then make it a question, Gideon answered from the doorway. I requested them for the railway. His appearance explained the clerk's caution. Gideon set his gloves on the counter and waited until they were alone. You have 9 days before the rates application, he said. I'll pay £15 for the deed today. Yesterday the market was a liability. It still is. I'm offering mercy. You drew a boundary through the weighbridge? I repeated the line our uncle used. Show me his survey. Gideon retrieved his gloves. Accept the money before the borough takes everything. He left without asking what she had found beneath the platform. Harriet returned with the tracing under her coat. Peter had brought his nephew Will, a joiner who worked at the boatyard. Will inspected the north aisle and named every danger before discussing payment. 2 rafters needed temporary props. The gutter above stall 3 had to be cleared. The loose herb court panes required boarding from below. A proper roof repair will cost more than £40, he said. I can make 3 stalls safe for 8 shillings if we use boatyard remnants. Harriet had 10 shillings 8 pence after the tracing fee. She agreed to the limited work and wrote the terms in front of Peter. Will bought reclaimed timber, nails, and tarred cloth. He showed her the receipts before taking 8 shillings. Harriet kept 2 shillings 8 pence for food and candles. They worked for 2 days. Will set the props and boarded the dangerous glass. Peter cleared the gutter from ground level with a hook pole. Harriet carried ruined baskets outside, opened the block drain, and scrubbed the north counters with hot water. The repairs made no claim on the southern roof. Rope and painted warnings kept people away from it. During those 2 days, Harriet checked 14 barrows and 3 shop weights. Several traders paid more than the posted penny after watching her repeat every test. Her receipts totaled 1 shilling 9 pence. A poultry seller named Hester Drew examined stall 3 after the first dry night. I lost £4 here before the closing, Hester said. Deposit and spoiled eggs. I cannot repay money I never received. Then why should I return? Because you'll keep 1 copy of every weighing. The fee and rent will be written before you unload. Hester pressed her thumb against the repaired counter. 1 week, 6 pence. No promise after that. Harriet accepted the 6 pence and gave her a signed receipt. Fenbridge Market had its first trader, though Harriet remained more than £11 short of the rate installment. That evening, she and Peter compared the railway tracing with the painted columns. Each axle width corresponded to one of the 6 old stall numbers. The black arrow began below stall 6. Peter frowned. There wasn't a 6th trading stall when I worked here. Gideon used that bay for returned crates. The 1,848 index calls it a measure walk. Could have been closed before my time. Harriet stretched a cord from the platform rod to the arrow. It passed behind the crate stack and entered the wall at knee height. They removed the crates. Lime wash covered a rectangular iron plate set beneath the plaster. It measured 3 feet across and 2 feet high. No handle or hinge showed on its face. 6 shallow sockets formed a line along the plate's upper edge. Harriet cleaned the first with the tip of her gauge. Its width matched the iron studs beside the weighbridge. Peter brought the candle closer. A door with no keyhole? Harriet studied the 6 sockets and the painted axle columns above them. The scale may be the key. Peter looked from the iron plate to the weighbridge. How does a cart turn a lock in a wall? Through the rod, Harriet said. The 6 sockets must show what the mechanism has released. They returned to the platform. Harriet opened the inspection hatch while Peter held the candle. Beneath each row of studs, a hinged finger connected to a tooth bar. Moving a wheel against one pair shifted the hidden rod by a different distance. The painted columns supplied the order. Peter pushed the cart while Harriet guided its front axle onto the studs, marked for stall 1. A dull click came from the west wall. When they checked the plate, the first socket had sunk level with the iron. They repeated the movement for stall 2. The second socket withdrew. The cart did not fit the third pair cleanly. Harriet measured the spacing again and found dried mortar packed around one stud. 20 minutes of careful scraping freed it. Forcing the wheel earlier would have bent the finger below. By midnight, 5 sockets lay flat. The 6th remained raised. Stall 6 had no matching full axle. Harriet studied the painted width and separated the cart shafts. The measurement matched the narrow distance between them. This position was meant for hand barrows, she said. They turned the cart and lowered both shafts onto the 6 studs. The beam rose, the rod struck once, and the final socket withdrew. The iron plate opened 2 inches. Cold, dry air escaped around its edge. Harriet held a candle inside first. The flame remained steady. Peter wedged the plate with a timber before she crawled through. The passage beyond was high enough for her to kneel. Brick walls ran west beneath the old measure walk. Copper linkage rods connected the weighbridge to a small ticket press fixed on a stone bench. Its maker's plate read, Fenbridge Independent Measure, 1,848. Harriet turned the press handle. A steel die descended onto an empty slot where a paper ticket would once have rested. The die contained separate spaces for cart tare, gross load, produce weight, fee, and stall number. No clerk could alter one figure without leaving the others visible, she said. Peter crouched at the doorway. Gideon stopped using pressed tickets before the market closed. He wrote everything by hand. That change had allowed the same cart tare to be deducted twice. Beyond the press stood a narrow oak cabinet. 6 compartments carried brass nameplates instead of stall numbers. Harriet read them aloud. Ann Weller, Sarah Forth, Miriam Cade, Eliza Say, Ruth Bell, Catherine Orr. Peter reached past her and wiped Eliza Say's plate with his sleeve. My mother, he said. She sold onions here after my father died. Did she own a stall? She rented a board by the day. That's what I was told. The lock had been forced recently. 5 compartments were empty. The 6th held curled ticket fragments, a strip of red sealing wax, and half of a folded parchment. Harriet lifted the parchment without flattening its brittle crease. The surviving lines referred to the common measuring house in Western Walk. Another clause prohibited either from being sold separately from the market hall. The lower half, including the signatures and date, had been torn away. This could challenge Gideon's boundary, Peter said. It could also be a discarded draft. We need the complete instrument and proof it was executed. A rectangular patch of clean wood showed where a document box had stood. Blue survey chalk marked the cabinet shelf. The same chalk crossed the floor toward the far end of the passage. Harriet followed it to a second iron door. This one opened beneath the bricked arch in the western yard. Its inner bolt had been cut through. Fresh filings remained in the groove. The railway surveyors had entered from outside, removed the box, and left through the market. Peter examined the broken bolt. Barlow? Perhaps. Gideon knew the old survey was here, but we cannot prove who took it. Harriet wrapped the parchment fragment in her cleanest handkerchief. The ticket scraps went into a dry wooden tray. She left the press and cabinet untouched so another witness could see their condition. When they crawled back into the market, morning light showed above the herb court. Hester had arrived early with 2 baskets of eggs. She stared at the open plate. What's under my stall? A measuring passage, Harriet said. It may explain why the market was closed. Hester set down her baskets. Will it help you pay the rates? Not today. The answer cost Harriet visible confidence. Hester still opened stall 3 and displayed her eggs. Peter remained beside the 6 names. My mother could write. I remember her keeping folded papers beneath the flour bin. Do they survive? My sister cleared the cottage after she died. Anything she kept went into a tin trunk. Where is the trunk? Peter's expression changed. Gideon bought it with the cottage contents 3 months ago. Peter wanted to enter the grocery store room before Gideon could move the tin trunk. He closes at 7, Peter said. The yard wall is low, and he would call you a thief before morning. My mother's papers are inside. Then we obtain them in a way he cannot use against you. Peter disliked the answer, though he followed Harriet across Market Lane. Gideon received them beside the grocery's new mahogany counter. The tin trunk stood behind him with its lid open. Old clothes and household receipts had been spread across a table. You searched it, Peter said. I bought it. You bought chairs and crockery. You knew nothing about my mother's papers. Gideon lifted a bundle of yellowed household bills. This is what she kept. Harriet saw a clean rectangle at the bottom where a larger packet had rested. Blue chalk dust marked one corner. Where is the packet? She asked. Gideon smiled. You've spent too long breathing market damp. He produced a folded agreement. The Fenbridge Railway Company would pay £12 directly to the borough. In return, Harriet would grant 6 months access to the Western Yard. £12 would stop the rates application. The trunk would also be returned to Peter. Harriet read every clause. The company could lower the yard, remove obstructions, and alter any mechanism crossing its proposed boundary. The permission would let Barlow destroy the measure walk before a court examined it. "You called this temporary access," she said. "It is. The alterations are permanent." Gideon lowered his voice. "Sign it, and you keep your market. Refuse, and Peter loses an empty trunk while you lose a roof." Peter stepped forward. Harriet caught his sleeve. "If he strikes me," Gideon said, "the constable will settle your witness problem." Harriet released Peter only after he moved toward the door. She placed the agreement on the counter. "The answer is no." Outside, Peter pulled away from her. "You could have taken the trunk after he paid the rates. The papers are gone. He offered the shell because he wanted the passage. You chose a broken machine over my mother. I chose the only chance of proving what belonged to her." He left without helping Harriet open the market. The loss of his trust hurt more than Gideon's insult. It also left Harriet alone with 5 days before the borough acted. Hester arrived at noon and listened while Harriet described the offer. £12 would keep these gates open. For 6 months, the railway could remove everything beneath your stall tomorrow. Then put what you found on record before they do. That practical answer gave Harriet a task. She copied the parchment fragment line by line. She drew the iron plate, cabinet, ticket press, cut bolt, and 6 named compartments. Hester signed as a witness to the chamber's condition. Will added his name after inspecting the western door without entering. Peter did not return. At the Land and Rates office, the junior clerk accepted Harriet's statement as a disputed boundary notice. Filing and 2 certified copies cost 2 shillings 6 pence. It left her 2 shillings 5 pence for food, candles, and the market. "This filing does not suspend the rates demand," the clerk warned. "I understand. Without the missing signatures, the parchment proves very little. It proves enough to prevent anyone saying the chamber appeared after demolition." The clerk sanded the final page and sealed 1 copy into the borough packet. Harriet carried the other to Mr. Lyle. The solicitor read it standing beside his desk. "You refused a railway payment equal to the installment. It required me to surrender the evidence. You may have surrendered the property instead. Will you preserve this copy?" "As an officer of the court, yes. I cannot certify its claims." Harriet left the fragment with him in a sealed envelope. The knowledge layer remained inside the market. The press, linkage, and name compartments. The surviving document now had independent custody. She returned to find Peter sitting in the weighing office. His cap rested between his hands. "Hester told me what the agreement allowed," he said. Harriet placed no demand on his apology. Peter looked toward the open inspection hatch. "My mother used to say the market paid women twice, once for produce and once at Christmas. I thought she meant busy trade. A yearly distribution?" "Perhaps." Gideon asked about that phrase when he bought the cottage contents. "The lost packet might contain accounts of money held for the 6 women. It might also contain the executed boundary instrument." Harriet recorded Peter's memory without treating it as proof. At dusk, she closed the iron plate and sealed its edge with wax impressed by Hester's thimble. Any entry would break the pattern. Will screwed an oak brace across the western door. The next morning, market customers found the wicket gate chained from outside. A burro cart stood in the lane. 2 bailiffs waited beside it with an order for possession. Harriet checked the date. Gideon had persuaded the borough to act 4 days early. The order bore that morning's date and demanded the full £102. Harriet showed the senior bailiff the earlier demand for a £12 installment. That arrangement was conditional, he said. The borough withdrew it after receiving evidence that trade had resumed in an unsafe building. Evidence from whom? He pointed to Gideon's sworn statement attached to the order. Across the lane, Gideon watched from the grocery doorway. Peter gripped the chain. He told them she abandoned the place. Now he says she opened it. Both claims serve him, Harriet said. The bailiffs allowed her 1 hour to remove personal property. Market fixtures, rent receipts, and anything attached to the weighing system would remain under distraint. Hester carried out her eggs. Harriet returned the 6-pence stall payment despite Hester's protest. Will recovered his own tools and left the timber props in place. Peter lifted Harriet's trunk while she packed her blanket, clothes, folding gauge, and copies of every measurement. She left the repaired stove and the produce scale. They had become part of the market's work. Mr. Barlow arrived before the hour ended with 4 railway laborers. He carried written permission from the borough to make the weighbridge safe. You may inspect it, Harriet said. My filed notice records every part of that mechanism. It also records a cut bolt and an unsecured pit. You cut the outer bolt. Barlow's expression remained flat. Prove that in the inquiry. His men removed the green cart and looped a chain around the beam housing. Harriet called the bailiff to witness the wax seal before anyone entered the measure walk. Hester's thimble pattern remained unbroken. Barlow avoided the iron plate. Instead, he opened the inspection hatch and cut the hidden rod beside the main weighing arm. The sound carried through the empty stalls. Peter lunged toward the pit. Harriet blocked him. They want you arrested, she said. The laborers drove out the 6 stud heads and placed them in a railway crate. When they tried to lift the counterweight, its chain slipped. Iron struck stone, cracking the beam pivot and dropping one side of the platform 3 inches. Barlow ordered the work stopped. He labeled the entire system condemned. The mechanism Harriet had restored now lay severed beneath the cart's wheel marks. At noon, Mr. Lyle met her outside the chain gate. He had obtained the borough committee minutes. The railway company had deposited the full arrears in exchange for a conditional conveyance. Final completion would occur after a 6-month title and redemption period. Can I challenge it? Harriet asked. With an executed instrument, proof of a superior interest, or payment of the arrears and costs. How much with costs? £111, 14 shillings. She had 1 shilling 11 pence after refunding Hester. Mr. Lyle continued. Gideon has offered the railway his grocery yard in the disputed western strip. Their junction warehouse requires both parcels. If the market sale completes, his separate agreement becomes valuable. So the borough clears his boundary problem for him, unless your fragment leads to the full document. Harriet looked toward the grocery. Gideon had crossed the lane and stood beside Barlow. You should have signed, he said. Now the town knows what your principals cost. Hester set down an egg basket. Her principals returned my rent. Yours sold a weight 6 ounces light. Several people heard her. Gideon's face tightened, though public discomfort did not alter the order. The bailiffs locked Harriet's weighing office. Her repaired door, dry blanket corner, account board, and first 7 pence of honest trade disappeared behind the chain. Peter carried her trunk to his cottage. The single room had no spare bed. Hester offered Harriet the attic above her poultry shed in exchange for help cleaning and grating eggs each morning. Harriet accepted. Pride would provide neither shelter nor evidence. For the next week, she watched railway men enter Fenbridge Market under borough supervision. They boarded the north stalls, removed the public weighing notice, and painted the proposed boundary across the gate. The iron plate remained sealed because Harriet's filed inventory had forced the borough to preserve the disputed chamber. That limited protection was the only result of her sacrifice. A notice appeared on the gate at the end of March. Conditional sale to Fenbridge Railway Company, final title inquiry and conveyance, 18 September 1875. 6 months. Gideon had the missing packet, the full use of the grocery, and railway solicitors preparing his boundary. Harriet had copies, witness names, a broken mechanism she could no longer reach, and Peter's memory of a Christmas payment. She read the 6 women's names from her sketch once more. If Eliza Say had received money each year, someone outside the market must have paid it. Harriet folded the sketch and turned toward the parish offices. The search could no longer begin inside Fenbridge Market. The parish offices held no market deed, though the Christmas account books contained Peter's missing payment. Harriet found the first entry in December 1849. 6 women had each received £1 and 8 shillings from the Fenbridge Six-Stall Fund. The names matched the brass plates inside the measure walk. Payments continued every Christmas. After a founder died, her portion passed to a daughter, sister, or widowed stallholder. Eliza Say received her final distribution in 1868. The next year's page recorded the transfer of the fund to the Eastern Counties Trustee Bank. A reference number led Harriet to the bank's county branch. The journey required 2 train fares she could not afford. Through April, she graded Hester's eggs each morning and tested shop weights in nearby villages. Peter repaired barrows while Will took evening work at the boatyard. They saved every spare penny in a sealed tea tin. In May, Harriet and Peter traveled to the county town. The bank manager confirmed that Deposit Trust 614 still existed. He could release nothing until Peter proved his relationship to Eliza and a solicitor established the trust's current officers. The search lasted another 10 weeks. Peter obtained his baptism entry and his mother's death record. Mr. Lyle traced the last surviving trustee to a woman named Margaret Orr, granddaughter of Catherine Orr. Harriet found Margaret teaching needlework 20 miles from Fenbridge. Margaret had never heard of the fund. She did possess a small iron seal inherited from her grandmother. Its face carried 6 linked stall roofs and the words "Independent Measure." With Margaret present, the bank opened trust box 614 inches July. The executed deed lay inside beside a boundary schedule, deposit certificates, engineering drawings, and 63 pressed way tickets. 6 market women had created the trust in 1848 after merchants repeatedly deducted cart weight twice from their produce. They pooled savings, leased Fenbridge Market, and commissioned an automatic tear mechanism. Its linked ticket press recorded the cart, gross load, produce weight, fee, and stall in one impression. The 6 stud settings served carts of different widths. The measure walk allowed any seller to watch the linkage operate. The women later purchased the market and Western Yard outright. Their deed made the property indivisible. The grocery's proprietor served only as weighing steward and document custodian. Neither the market nor the Western Strip could be conveyed for private benefit. After the founders died, yearly profits were to fund low rents, widows' stalls, repairs, and independent weight inspections. The dormant account held £176, 9 shillings and 2 pence. It could discharge the rates and begin the roof repairs once lawful trustees were appointed. Peter touched his mother's press tickets. She owned part of the place. She protected its purpose, Harriet said. That mattered longer than a stall. The final paper in the box carried Benjamin Cole's signature and a February 1875 date. He reported that Gideon had abandoned the press, altered handwritten tickets, and concealed the annual distributions. Benjamin asked the bank to reopen the trust and proposed Harriet as the next measuring steward. He wrote that she had detected false weights since childhood. He also admitted delaying action because exposure would ruin the grocery's name. Harriet read that sentence twice. Benjamin had believed in her skill and still left her unprotected until his final weeks. His letter offered truth without repairing the years he had remained silent. The market had been a deliberate inheritance. The debt was Gideon's attempt to make it appear worthless. Mr. Lyle compared the executed boundary schedule with Gideon's railway tracing. The false line cut away the entire measure walk. Gideon's application even cited the deed's memorial number while omitting its restriction. That citation showed he knew the trust existed. The bank appointed Margaret and Peter as temporary trustees, subject to the title inquiry. Harriet became their technical witness. During August, Will used the original engineering drawing to forge a replacement rod and repair sleeve. The borough refused access to install them before the sale date. It did, however, order Barlow to return the 6 stud heads he had removed. The county inspector examined Harriet's measurements and agreed to attend the inquiry with 3 certified weights. He offered no opinion on ownership. He would certify only what the machine did. By September, Gideon had announced that the railway conveyance was certain. He repainted the grocery, ordered a new delivery wagon, and promised suppliers a warehouse beside the future junction. On September 17th, the borough granted Harriet 2 supervised hours inside Fenbridge Market. Will reset the cracked pivot. Peter replaced the studs. Harriet fitted the new rod through the old brick sleeve. The empty green cart settled the beam at 0. She aligned its wheels with the proper studs. Its full tear returned. Harriet left the machine in that position and locked her tools inside the weighing office. The railway company would come to sign the conveyance the following morning. The borough reopened Fenbridge Market at 8 o'clock for the title inquiry. A table stood beside the weighbridge. The railway solicitor arranged the conveyance papers while Gideon spoke with 2 company directors. Borough officers occupied the north stalls. Peter, Margaret, Hester, Will, Mr. Lyle, and the county inspector waited behind Harriet. The railway surveyor moved the green cart to the platform center. Its wheels left the iron studs. The indicator settled at 0. Gideon pointed at the beam. "The machine is broken. Remove it before someone is injured." Barlow signaled 2 laborers with crowbars. Harriet stepped between them and the platform. "Test it before destroying it." The inquiry chairman granted her 10 minutes. The county inspector placed 3 certified weights beside her, 7, 14, and 28 pounds. Harriet set them around the cart. The pointer rose to 49 pounds. "The platform measures every added pound," she said. "It is subtracting the cart's tear." She asked the surveyor to turn the wheels toward the proper studs. When both axles engaged the mechanism, the repaired rod struck beneath the floor. The beam rose to 900 weight and 2 pounds the full cart plus the 3 standards. The inspector checked the reading twice. The machine is accurate within 1 pound. The railway solicitor closed the unsigned contract folder. Harriet opened the inspection hatch and showed the restored linkage. She explained how each axle setting subtracted a known cart tear. The press ticket recorded that deduction with the gross load and final produce weight. Gideon abandoned the press, Peter said. Then he deducted the cart again on handwritten tickets. Hester placed the flour weight Gideon had sold the baker on the table. The inspector confirmed it was 6 ounces light. Gideon faced the chairman. This inquiry concerns land, not shop complaints. Mr. Lyle rose. The land and machine were bound by the same executed trust. The bank manager produced Trust Box 614's custody record. Margaret pressed her inherited seal into soft wax beside the deed's original impression. The patterns matched. The boundary schedule placed the western measure walk 4 feet beyond the wall. It included the exact rod sleeve, second entrance, and 6 inspection positions. The borough's conditional conveyance divided property the deed required to remain whole. One railway director turned toward Gideon. You declared that western strip free from trust restrictions. I relied upon my uncle's papers. Mr. Lyle opened Gideon's vendor application. You cited Memorial 1848 to 611. That is this deed's registry number. Gideon's answer came too quickly. A number proves nothing about the document's contents. It proves you knew which document governed the land, Harriet said. The chairman read Benjamin's February letter. It named Gideon's altered tickets, concealed distributions, and effort to sell the measure walk. Benjamin's final request appointed Harriet as the next measuring steward. Barlow claimed he had removed the studs for safety. The borough clerk produced Harriet's March inventory and his own copy of Barlow's work order. The order authorized inspection only. It did not permit him to cut the rod or strike out the studs. The evidence now formed one chain. The 6 names, parish payments, bank deposits, press tickets, automatic tear, intact boundary schedule, false railway line, cut mechanism, and Gideon's memorial citation. The railway solicitor conferred with the directors. We withdraw from this conveyance, he announced. The company will seek repayment of its deposit and costs from the parties who warranted the title. Gideon pushed back his chair. The borough accepted my line. After your sworn statement, the chairman replied, that statement is now referred to the borough solicitor. The dormant trust paid the £102 in arrears before noon. The chairman suspended the distraint and restored temporary possession to Margaret and Peter as appointed trustees. Final confirmation would follow in county court, though the railway sale could no longer proceed. Gideon's separate warehouse agreement failed with it. The directors canceled his promised access payment and demanded return of their advance. Barlow was removed from the site pending the company's investigation. Peter approached Gideon. My mother's tin trunk. I bought it lawfully. The contents are part of the trust inquiry, Mr. Lyle said. Dispose of them now, and the court will be told. For the first time, Gideon looked toward the market gate without an answer ready. The chairman handed Margaret the keys. She passed them to Harriet. Harriet did not address the crowd. She rolled the green cart off the studs and reset the beam. Then she opened the iron gate that had remained chained for 6 months. Hester carried her egg baskets inside first. Peter followed with the green cart. Margaret reopened the weighing office while Harriet removed 6 months of dust from the ticket press. Temporary possession did not make the roof sound. The trustees admitted only Hester and 2 carriers that first day. Will inspected every prop again, and the southern aisle remained closed behind rope. County Court confirmed the trust in October. The ruling preserved Fenbridge Market, the Western Yard, the Measure Walk, and the automatic weighing system as one property. Harriet's inheritance made her custodian and measuring steward rather than private owner. She accepted that distinction gladly. The court ordered Gideon to return the tin trunk and account for the distributions and weighing fees he had concealed. Eliza Say's papers included press tickets, Christmas receipts, and notes describing how the 6 founders saved pennies from each market day to purchase the hall. Peter read them at his mother's old compartment. He kept her household letters and placed the market records with the trust. Gideon's false vendor declaration brought no prison sentence. It cost him the railway advance, legal fees, and restitution to traders who produced duplicate tickets. The grocery was sold the following spring to meet those claims. Harriet received her unpaid 6 weeks of wages from the proceeds. She did not bid for the shop. The trust began repairs with the money its founders had protected. After paying the £102 in rates, it spent £46 on roof timbers and slate work. Drainage and masonry cost another £9. Repairing the press, platform, and 6 selectors required £6 12 shillings. The remaining reserve could not restore everything. Trustees reopened the northern stalls first and used rent and weighing fees to finance later work. The southern roof took another year. Will supervise the repairs and hired laborers when the budget allowed. Peter became the elected trader's trustee. Margaret traveled to Fenbridge once each month and checked every account against the bank deposit book. Harriet received a salary of £26 a year, a small room beside the weighing office, and authority to reject any weight that failed inspection. She continued earning extra money by grading produce and teaching sellers to check their own measures. Every load produced 2 pressed tickets. One stayed with the trader. The second remained in a numbered market file. Cart tear, gross weight, produce weight, fee, and stall appeared together where no clerk could quietly subtract the same amount twice. Hester returned permanently to stall 3. The baker replaced his light flour weight and sent customers across the lane for verification. Other traders came more slowly. Some still remembered the old losses and refused to trust any coal. Harriet never asked them to trust her name. She opened the mechanism, showed them the moving rods, and invited them to watch their tickets being pressed. Evidence changed more minds than apology could. By March 1876, 8 stalls traded 3 days each week. 2 were reserved at reduced rent for widows and women supporting children. A covered public table allowed farmers to divide shared loads before sale. The annual Christmas surplus resumed under the original rule and paid for stall repairs instead of private distributions. The railway altered its junction plan. Its new line curved beyond the western yard, preserving the measure walk. Company engineers later requested permission to study the tear mechanism for other rural markets. The trustees allowed drawings only if the independent inspection principle remained attached. Benjamin's final letter stayed in the trust box. Harriet read it once after the court ruling and did not take it home. His faith in her skill mattered. His long silence remained part of the account. Her room beside the weighing office had a narrow bed, a washstand, and one window overlooking the platform. She paid for the curtains with her recovered wages. Peter repaired the lower door hinge, though he claimed Harriet had weakened it on her first night. "You pulled it like a dock gate," he said. "It opened. It came away in your hand." Hester laughed from stall 3. The sound crossed a market that had once held only dripping water and an empty cart. On the anniversary of Harriet's arrival, the trustees mounted 6 restored brass nameplates above the north aisle. Beneath them, they placed a simple notice explaining the independent measure and its founders. Harriet made the first weighing of the day. A young vegetable seller rolled a hand barrow between the correct studs. The platform removed its tear. Harriet added the produce, balanced the beam, and pulled the press handle. The machine stamped 2 identical tickets. One went into the seller's hand. The other remained in Fenbridge Market, beneath 6 names that could no longer be removed from its walls.